All right, let's go back to the control beer again. And then have a smell and have a taste of the beer on the right. That's opposite to left, Duncan.
Getting the grilling today, mate.
Standard.
Normal.
So what do you reckon, Duncan? Are they the same?
No, not the same.
No? Matt?
No.
Not the same.
Not the same, eh? How would you describe that, the difference?
I'm trying to even think about that. I think it's a little bit similar to that one where it's just flat. There's just There's no fizziness on the tongue.
Yeah.
There's a bit more fizziness on the tongue.
Let's take a step back then, because I really want you to dive into this one. This one's quite common, right? Don't want you to think about how it tastes. I want you to tell me how it smells.
It smells. I don't really smell much at all.
How does it smell compared to the control beer? Do they smell the same?
I don't think so.
I'm getting a bit of butterscotch off that one. I think.
So this is the other. So the reason why I said to the guys here, don't blurt out, because we're very
Puts it in your head.
No, exactly. Influence, right? So we can influence each other, right?
Yeah.
So once you have another smell now, and I'm going to, and as Duncan said, butterscotch. Right? Have a smell. Do you smell butterscotch?
It's definitely sweet, some kind of sweet element there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. If the three of us know what it is.
We'll cut that.
No. So the thing is, right, is that the three of us, we know what that is because we're very perceptive of it, right? But the kind of the important thing is the influence in a sensory panel is super important, and that you make sure you don't influence other panelists, because if I said bubblegum, everyone would start going, oh, yeah, bubblegum, yeah. So, but in this case, as Duncan said, butterscotch.
Yep.
Do you smell butterscotch in it?
I do.
You do now that you've been made aware of it?
It's been put in my head a little bit, but I definitely some kind of sweetness, definitely there.
Yeah, exactly. So that compound's called diacetyl, right? And so it is basically a chemical compound that smells and tastes like butterscotch.
Yeah.
It's something that goes into, they use it in food manufacture. It goes into margarine to make canola oil taste like butter. Goes into microwave popcorn. Goes into your vape. Goes into a lot of vapes, because people who vape are weirdos, but they like that sort of thing. And so in some circumstances, it's quite pleasant. But
smoking's only cool in Europe, Hendo.
Yeah, that's right. So, but in this particular beer, if you got that New World Lager and it smelled and tastes like that, would you consider it to be true to brand?
No, I'd return it, personally. If I made a beer like that, I wouldn't release it.
Yeah. So diacetyl, again, is another chemical compound that's made through fermentation. So all yeasts make a precursor to diacetyl called AAL. Right, it's got a really long name. I'm just going to call it AAL to be nice and simple. And so the yeast cells excrete the AAL. It then goes through kind of a process of oxidation, turns into diacetyl. And then at the end of fermentation, when all of the sugars, the sugars that the yeast have been using for energy have been used up, and there's no more sugar, and they want to keep the party going, they'll actually start to look for other things to consume. And diacetyl is actually one of those chemical compounds that yeast can consume to metabolize and stay alive and that sort of thing, right? So during fermentation here in the brewery, we have something called the diacetyl rest, where we raise the temperature of the beer near the end of fermentation, knowing that the diacetyl is in there, and raising the temperature increases the metabolism or the metabolic rate of the yeast, and they'll actually consume that diacetyl faster. I wouldn't release a beer that's like that.
Yeah, no, and it definitely doesn't taste anything near the same.
So here's the interesting thing, right? So in this particular style of beer, it's considered to be a fault. But there are styles of beer where diacetyl is actually, in small amounts, is considered to be one of the attributes of the style. So
what kind of styles?
Very interesting. I would consider diacetyl a fault in a lager. When we were in Europe, shortly after we parted ways with Hendo, we went to Bohemia, not to be confused with Bavaria. Bohemia is the Czech Republic, or the area of the Czech Republic. Prague, Pilsen, and they make a lot of different Pilsners there, and a lot of them have this characteristic, and it's common in the beer style.
Yeah.
So it's how they make the beer, and I think a lot of it for them, they ferment the beer so cold, fermenting it at 6 to 8 degrees, which is, for most brewers out there, they wouldn't even think of doing something that cold. It takes a long time to ferment, but the beer doesn't get warm enough at the end of fermentation to actually reabsorb the chemical that Hendo was just talking about. That's all I could put it down to. I found it on tap in bottle. It was very common throughout that part of the world in a Pilsner style of beer.
Has that got anything to do with climates?
Or
is it just how they want to make it?
Possibly how they used to make it traditionally. But with modern technology, the climate doesn't really matter when you're producing beer. I think that's become part of the style, and now it's almost expected in the beer.
Yeah.
Just probably not as strong as that, but definitely a hint of it. And as he was saying, you become more sensitive to different flavours. And that's one, personally, I don't like at all. As soon as I taste it in a beer, in a lager or a hoppy beer, for me it ruins the beer.
Most Australian brewers, Matty and I, most of the beers that we make are American-style beers, pale ale, IPA, double IPA, hazies and all that sort of stuff, where in American styles beer, diacyl's just a massive no-no at all. But in, say, Pilsner, some Bavarian style beers, a little bit of diacetyl is okay. Some English styles, it's okay as well. Like an ESB or something like that. It's a little bit of diacetyl can actually add to the character.
Yeah, in a malty beer, it probably sort of works with the malt. The sort of perceived sweetness is okay in some English style ales. Scotch ales.
But this particular chemical compound is really funny as well because not only is it produced by yeast, but it's also produced by bacteria. So lactic acid bacteria will actually also make the same chemical compound. And so if you have a pub, for instance, that doesn't clean their lines, quite often you get diacetyl in the beer. The beer didn't leave the brewery like that, but it goes through dirty lines, and diacetyl is one of the potential issues that can happen.
Yeah. So you're trying to obviously do as much as you can, like your end here, to prevent anything like that potentially happening. And then when you obviously get it, these are some of the things that you're trying to prevent once you're serving it to customers.
Yeah, it's correct. I mean, one of the big ones he said is the line. Sometimes you can go to a place, you can tell if the lines are dirty because you'll have one beer and it tastes a certain way. Then you pull the next beer through the line and it's different tasting because it sits in the line. The line's not clean.
Yeah.
And so there's that bacteria build up in the lines if you don't clean them properly, is where you get them sitting, say, two pints or whatever, one or two schooners in the line, sits there overnight or whatever.
Yeah. So that can sit there if, unless you pull it through and clean it daily or nightly.
Once a week.
Once a week, But what I'm saying, if the lines are dirty to begin with, if it sits there overnight and it's got that bacteria build up and sediment build up in that line, then you'll find the first couple through that line will be tasting pretty average.
What about like some of those tap systems where like they're not refrigerated from keg to tap, where there's the keg sitting warm?
Yeah, look, that's an issue, particularly when you're trying to get the carbonation right. If you're sitting on an ambient system and the kegs are warm and it's going through glycol to coal, the changing of the temperature of it makes it go a bit funny. You lose quite a lot of beer that way. Optimally, you want to obviously always have your beer from a cold room into your glass, but that's not always possible with a lot of venues as well.
Yep.
And that's just a reality, I suppose. And that's why it's important to do all those quality control if you do have that system.
I'm just wondering also from your point of view, Duncan, I hope that it wouldn't have happened too many times, but like what happens in a situation where you did a keg or something like that and it does happen to be a little bit not how you like?
Oh, well, obviously you contact the brewer or the distributor and report the problem and see if they can sort it out for you and explain what it is.
Yeah.
You contact them first. That's basically it, really. You take it off. Obviously, you don't serve it until you're satisfied of getting a replacement or whatever the action may be.
Yeah.
And a good brewer, a good reputable brewer, will will take that complaint and won't get defensive about it. What it's really, when you make beer, you put your heart and soul into it. And if a customer has a complaint, it's very easy for a brewer just to sort of, blow it off and just go, whatever, they don't know what they're talking about or something like that. When I hear a complaint from a customer, which is a venue or a consumer, I make sure that I sort of log that complaint so I can actually track that over time. And I don't get defensive. You got to listen to your consumers, right? As I said at the start, the consumers, they don't know why something doesn't taste right. They just know it doesn't taste right, and I trust them to know that something doesn't taste right. So when I get a complaint, it's not a reflection of my skill as a brewer. I actually look at it as an opportunity to improve, right? So I like hearing complaints, and I like putting beer down the drain, because every time I hear a complaint, it means, okay, here's a way in which I can make my beer even better.
Yeah. And
that's what a good brewery will do.
Well, the worst thing would be not getting any sort of feedback where people are being honest, and then you're like, oh, you think it's all great, but it could be better.
Absolutely. From a consumer's perspective, if I ever had a complaint about a beer and heard nothing, that would be a bit of an insult, So there's really no reason to sort of for a brewer to get defensive about someone's legitimate complaint.
Yeah.
Even if, in your opinion, you don't agree with them, if you don't believe that there's anything wrong with the beer, you just replace it anyway, because it's just good customer service. Just looking after your consumers who spend their hard-earned money on your beer and that sort of thing. So I'm always open and receptive to it. And all the clients that I work with, I sort of teach them to change their mindset to be more open and receptive to customer complaints. And even insofar as, if you have beer that needs to be recalled or dumped or something like that, that actually goes onto your P&L as well. So you can actually, as a company, you can actually see, put a financial cost around quality.
Yeah.
And that helps the business, the brewing business grow and become better. And, it's not about sort of, being instantaneously the world's best brewer the next day. What we're all on is a journey of continuous improvement. And as long as you're on this journey of continuous improvement, they're the breweries who are succeeding and doing well.